It's official. EVs are not the only road to green emissions. After a couple of years of unfounded optimism, it finally became clear to everyone that the world is not ready for such a radical change, and that full electrification is not going to happen anytime soon. Toyota ditched EVs and is having its best year ever, and that's just one of the many reasons why the world's largest automaker was right about all of this. We found 7, so let's check them out together. Number 7. Toyota made record high profit last year. At the time most other car makers were drowning in debts thanks to their unsuccessful EV projects, things in Toyota were quite the opposite. The last fiscal year, which ended in March, was probably the best in the company's history. Unlike Ford and Chevy, which were forced to postpone their failed EV projects, Toyota is enjoying the fruitage of its persistent policy that was mostly about hybrids and a cautious approach to full electrification. Considering that the Japanese automaker has been working on hybrids for more than 25 years, it established a sustainable business model years ago and now makes a huge profit on its hybrid vehicles, even though they're often cheaper than their gas-only counterparts. Thanks to that and the huge popularity of other products, Toyota managed to sell more than 11.2 million vehicles in the last year, and it's by far the largest manufacturer in the world. Compared to the previous year, that's a 9% production increase, while sales figures went up 7%. And if you think that sales numbers are great, check out the profit margins. They're so high that only in the last fiscal year, the Japanese automaker made an astonishing profit of $35.4 billion. That's a 70% increase over the previous fiscal year, which was also a record high back in the day, which says a lot about Toyota's approach and how it's paying off at the moment. Toyota made a bigger profit than any other automotive company, including Tesla, which was good for about $15 billion in the last year. Number 6. New ICE engine is a definite no to full electrification. This is arguably one of the biggest pieces of news we've heard in a while, and it's pretty easy to explain why. Namely, at the time when other companies are still spending enormous money on EV development, all in order to keep up with cheap competition from China, it seems like Toyota is saying a definite no to full electrification. Because instead of putting money on battery development and similar things, Toyota has just announced that it's developing a new generation of internal combustion engines that run on gasoline. The new engine will be a joint venture and it will be co-developed with Mazda and Subaru. Moreover, the company already unveiled the prototype of the new engine, and from what we know so far, it will be a small displacement unit designed to work in combination with electric motors in hybrid setups. But what's particularly interesting is that Toyota also announced that the new engine will be capable of burning other fuels as well, including hydrogen, which clearly suggests that this is yet another massive bet by Toyota against EVs. According to Koji Sato, Toyota CEO, the new engine is part of the company's bigger plan to cultivate diverse options to ensure reductions in CO2 emissions. Toyota continues with its strive for EV alternatives such as hybrids, fuel cell cars, synthetic fuels, and many more, which we will talk about in a few moments. Number 5. Hybrids lead the way to carbon emissions cut. For a long time, it was believed that hybrids were just a temporary solution, something that would serve as a transition to full electrification. Today, it's clear that hybrids are not just a long-term prospect, but also something that leads the way to cutting carbon emissions. At a time when EVs still struggle to become more convenient, more affordable, and more complete cars in general, Toyota hybrids continue to impress the automotive community with their perfect blend of efficiency, convenience, and affordability. With all that in mind, it doesn't surprise that the last year brought a massive increase in their share of the market. In North America, gas-electric vehicles grew 63% over 2023, while the first quarter of 2024 ended with a 70% year-over-year growth. Hybrids now account for 9% of the US market, and there's no doubt that numbers will only continue to grow, considering that some of Toyota's most important models will soon be offered exclusively in hybrids. That's already the case with the new Camry, while the next generation RAV4 is expected to do the same. Things are no different in other parts of the world, so out of those impressive 11.2 billion vehicle units sold in the last year, 3.4 million of them were electrified. The latest projections for the US market suggest further growth at a fast pace, with some sources suggesting their share could easily go up to 46% by the end of 2025. Finally, the most impressive data about Toyota hybrids and car models in general. Currently, the demand is so high that despite the production is at full capacity, the average market day supply is just 5 to 8 days, depending on the sources. This clearly indicates that pretty much all Toyota models that come to dealers were actually pre-ordered. It's kind of a historical achievement that is in a complete set-off compared to electric vehicles, which are currently piling up on dealers' lots to the point that market supply is way over 100 days. Number 4. EV market limitations. From today's perspective, it seems like most automakers and governments were refusing to see the actual picture and the real potential for electrification on a global scale. Namely, they all neglected the facts that preconditions for full electrification are not the same in all parts of the world. We have parts of the world like China where authorities have poured enormous amounts of money into building impeccable EV infrastructure. Full electrification is also possible in more developed parts of Europe, but what about the other parts of the world? What about all those rural areas in North America? What about Asian and African markets? Will they be able to adopt electrification anytime soon? Of course, the answer is no, and that's what Toyota officials have been pointing out for years. This fight to cut carbon emissions needs to take into account different circumstances in different parts of the world. After all, Akio Toyoda clearly stated that it's useless to talk about full electrification at a time when more than 1 billion people around the globe don't even have access to electricity. He believes that electric vehicles will never account for more than 1/3 of the global car market, which leads us to the next chapter of Toyota's approach to fighting emissions: customer-driven electrification. Number 3. Customer-driven electrification. So far, governments around the world have been leading the way. On the other hand, it seems like no one ever asked customers what they think about electrification. They were never asked if they even wanted EVs, if they could live with them, or if they could even afford them. Toyota never wanted to be part of this, and long ago, Akio Toyoda clearly stated that the Japanese automaker would never impose anything. Instead, customers will decide what they want. Now it's clear that Toyota was once again right. This approach pays off hugely. As mentioned, Toyota is making record high profits in sales, while its broad range of models and different power sources seems like a clear winning combination. While others are forced to offer massive discounts to sell something buyers essentially don't want, Toyota is enjoying the moment and sells out everything it produces in a super short period, as we've mentioned just a few moments ago. Number 2. Multifaceted approach to zero emissions. This is closely related to the previous chapter when we talked about customers and what they want. Namely, Toyota officials believe that there are many different ways to cut emissions, and it's on buyers to pick the one that works best for them. And in order to meet that, Toyota is developing all kinds of alternative power sources. Of course, hybrids are currently on a swing, but we also know that Toyota has been developing hydrogen fuel cell vehicles for a while. Moreover, even internal combustion engines that burn hydrogen have been developed and now are in the testing phase. Furthermore, the company is also working on an engine that runs on ammonia. While we already talked about the next generation gas engine that will be developed with Mazda and Subaru. But all this doesn't mean that Toyota is completely against electric cars. No, the Japanese manufacturer also plans to increase production and sell 170,000 EVs this year, while some sources speculate about 800,000 units for 2025. In any case, it's pretty obvious that unlike any other car maker, Toyota owns technology for pretty much any kind of mobility, and that is ready for every scenario. Number 1. EVs are still not good enough. Above all, Toyota is cautious because EVs are still not technologically advanced enough to replace ICE cars. They may have the ability to accelerate incredibly quickly, but they're still not particularly convenient in terms of ownership and everyday ride. Limited range, charging issues, infrastructural challenges, and low reliability ratings are just some of the many limiting factors. Not to mention that EV technology is still very expensive and that most potential customers still can't afford it. In other words, Toyota always knew that there were too many deal breakers and that EV technology was still far from adequate enough to be embraced by the masses. Thanks for watching and see you next time.